Have you ever stopped and really asked yourself why the first $100,000 feels like an impossible mountain to climb? You work hard, you sacrifice your weekends, and you put every extra dollar into your savings. But when you look at your account at the end of the year, the needle has barely moved. It feels like you are pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill, and every time you stop to breathe, it threatens to roll back down. This initial phase is what many financial experts call the valley of disappointment. It is the period where your effort is high, but the visible results are painfully low. Most people spend their entire lives in this struggle, never realizing that wealth does not grow in a straight line. It curves. There is a secret to financial physics that the wealthy understand, but the average person is never taught in school or by their parents. It is the concept of wealth acceleration. It is the reason why it might take you 20 years to save your first $1 million, but only 7 years to reach your second million. And today we are going to look at the cold, hard data from the Federal Reserve and the actual math of the stock market to decode the 3 tipping points that change everything. If you are in your 50s and you feel like you are running out of time, this is the most important information you will hear this year, because you might be much closer to the tipping point than you think. Let us start with the brutal reality of where most people stand today. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, the median retirement savings for a household in their early 60s is only about $185,000. That sounds like a decent amount of money until you realize that at a safe withdrawal rate, that only generates about $600 a month in income. That is not a retirement. That is a survival struggle. The reason so many people reach their 60s with so little is not because they did not work hard enough. It is because they never reach the first tipping point where the money starts doing the heavy lifting. The first tipping point happens when your investment returns earn more in a year than you actually contribute from your paycheck. Charlie Munger, the legendary investor, famously said that the first $100,000 is a nightmare. He was right, and there is a mathematical reason for it. When you have a small portfolio, your own contributions do 90% of the work. If you have $10,000 invested and the market goes up 10%, you only made $1,000. That is a rounding error in your life. But once you cross the threshold of $250,000, the game changes entirely. A 10% return now means $25,000 of growth in a single year. Suddenly, the market is contributing more to your wealth than many people save in 3 full years of labor. This is the moment the engine finally catches fire and starts running on its own fuel. However, many people get stuck in the middle zone because they do not understand the second tipping point. The second tipping point is the one that provides the most emotional relief and a sense of true security. It is the moment when your investments earn as much as your actual job pays you in a year. Imagine you earn $60,000 a year in your career. If you have $600,000 invested in a diversified portfolio, a standard 10% market year brings in $60,000 in growth. Think about that for a second. You have effectively cloned yourself. You have a second version of you working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This digital version of you does not get tired, does not take sick days, and does not complain about the boss or the commute. This is where the fear of being fired or the stress of a toxic workplace starts to vanish from your life. You are no longer a slave to your paycheck because you have built a machine that matches your labor. But the most shocking part of this journey is the jump from the first million to the second million. Most people imagine that getting to $2 million will take another 20 years of grinding and saving. But the math of compounding says otherwise. If you invest consistently in the Standard & Poor 500 index, which has historically returned about 10% annually, your money doubles roughly every 7 to 8 years. This means the first $1 million is the hardest, but the second million is almost inevitable if you just stay out of the way and let time do its work. When you have $1 million, a 10% gain is $100,000. That is more than the average household income in the United States. By the time you reach $2 million, a good year in the market can add $200,000 to your net worth in just 12 months. At this stage, the wealth is growing so fast that you actually find it difficult to spend it as fast as it compounds. This is the ultimate goal of financial independence. But we must address the new reality of the economy as we look toward the year 2025 and beyond. For decades, experts told us the 4% rule was the gold standard for withdrawing money. But with rising costs and longer life expectancies, many modern analysts suggest a more cautious approach of 3.5%. This means that having $2 million is no longer just a luxury. It is a necessary buffer for a 30-year retirement. So why do so many people fail to hit these tipping points even when they have good jobs? It is because of two main enemies: lifestyle creep and the trap of non-liquid assets. We live in a culture that wants you to look rich rather than actually being wealthy in your bank account. People buy $50,000 trucks on 7-year loans and $15 fast food meals that provide zero long-term value. They treat their home equity as their primary retirement plan and assume the rising price of their house will save them. But here is the truth that no one wants to admit in public. You cannot pay your medical bills with your kitchen cabinets. You cannot buy groceries with the drywall in your guest bedroom. True freedom comes from investable, liquid assets like stocks and bonds that generate spendable cash flow. A house is a place to live, but an investment portfolio is a place to be free. If you are 55 years old and you feel behind, you must become an aggressive investor today. You need to perform a radical audit of your life and cut the expenses that do not buy you freedom. Redirect that capital into the compounding machine while you still have your peak earning years. You have to stop focusing on the price of the stock market today and start focusing on the amount of time you want to buy back for your future. Every extra percent you invest today is not just a dollar saved for a rainy day. It is a day of freedom purchased for your 65-year-old self. Another major obstacle is the psychological fear of market volatility. Many people sell their investments when the market drops 20%, effectively killing their compounding machine just when it was starting to work. You must realize that the market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. The data tells a clear story that the majority of people will never be financially free. They will never be free because they treat investing as an option instead of a non-negotiable necessity. They stop right before the curve starts to turn upward into exponential territory. They give up during the slow, grueling climb of the first $100,000 because they cannot see the mountaintop. But if you can endure that initial struggle and keep your eyes on the data, the math of the universe will eventually take over. Wealth is not a matter of luck or being born into the right family. It is a matter of patience, discipline, and understanding the laws of compounding. It is about reaching that point where money is no longer your master, but your most loyal and hard-working servant. So, I want to ask you a very personal question. Which tipping point are you currently chasing in your own life? Are you still in the nightmare of the first 100,000, or are you starting to see the acceleration of the first million? Leave a comment below and share your strategy for reaching the next level of financial physics. Remember, the second million is closer than you think, but only if you have the courage to finish the first one. Stay consistent, stay disciplined, and let the math do the work for you.